Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein.
As we end this first full week of January, the country is facing a very mixed bag. Donald J. Trump has been certified as the 47th president of the United States. It's a recovery only done once in American history. There are many rejoicing in what is viewed as a return to American values. At the same time, a horrific event in the French Quarter in New Orleans on New Year's morning has reminded all of us of how dangerous the entire world is at this time, and that this danger is not just overseas. While not at the level of 9/11, this is still a major tragedy, and we must work at all levels to make sure that there is not a repeat. New Orleans condolences and supporting rightful anger. I extend my heartfelt sympathy to each survivor of the deceased and wish a speedy recovery to the many who are injured. I can only imagine the hurt and loss you feel, as I did have a brother who was murdered, and the police in that city did not bother to even investigate his death. The terrorist attack on New Year's Day was an act of extreme cowardice. Only a coward takes a vehicle and runs down innocent civilians. I note that he had an Islamic name, but no idea how that relates to his display of an ISIS flag. That is the sign of truly the scum of the earth, and also the models for cowardice and anti-human civilization. I do not mention this murderer's name. My regular listeners know that I advocate not using names of killers, as it may stimulate others to commit senseless acts like this against others. Who, other than the murderer, is responsible? I hold the local law enforcement authorities responsible, as this is the first level. They were changing out the barricades on Bourbon Street that might have stopped this vehicle. Why was this project not completed before this popular night of revelry? These are also the same local authorities who failed their community when Katrina struck, and the state itself certified 971 dead. Now, that was not Galveston in 1900. That was in this century. The mayor and the governor tried to blame George W. Bush, then the president, but thinking Americans know that this type of preparation begins at the local level. This cowardly act was planned over time. Why did the FBI under Chris Wray not stop before this happened? Note that there was no free pass for President Trump on this yet another failed appointment during his first term. Of course, the FBI has been destroyed over time by a drive to ultimate wokeness. Their agents are chasing those who oppose abortion and parents concerned about their children's education, instead of protecting America and Americans. With the tie into ISIS, there are international implications. What happened to the CIA and the rest of the alphabet agencies that are supposed to be the best in the world? Right, more overpriced operations with overpaid bureaucrats and continued failures that require that we compare this terrorist attack to 9/11, the first World Trade Center bombing, and Oklahoma City. Enough! Time to fire people and reorient our entire government. We spend the most of any country. Why don't we have the best? Same questions for our military that cares more about being woke and DEI than killing our enemies. The New Orleans terrorist was a vet, and the Las Vegas explosion was by an active Army member. What on earth is happening to our military? And I say this as the proud son of a dad who served honorably in the U.S. Navy for over 28 years. Deterrence comes from having the best military in the world. Our so-called experts say we are still there, but rapidly fading versus our enemies. Why are we falling behind with nearly $1 trillion a year spent on it? And that does not include billions in healthcare and pensions that have not been funded for the vets. One clue is wasting trillions in Iraq and Afghanistan. No wonder the morale is bad, except I am told, of all things, in the Marines. Let's ponder that. Trump election certified. Yes, the VP is the president of the Senate, and therefore Kamala Harris was obligated to certify her loss to President Trump. At least she did not mess that up or cackle. Also confirmed was Mike Johnson, a Speaker of the House, with only a 3-vote margin. This was far too close and underscores the fact that Trump does not have nearly the mandate required on the legislative front. While he has a majority in both houses, only a few defections can kill promising bills. The Senate requires 60 votes for major new legislation. It is likely that Trump, who appointed 3 new SCOTUS judges in his first term, could name 3 more in the next 4 years. We'll see how that goes. There's been a lot of publicity about Trump's early nominations to his cabinet. Let's see how many get confirmed, and equally important, how quickly I am on record marking down Trump's grades for his first term due to his poor appointments in history and in key positions. In general, I like the current batch that have been announced. So let's stand by. Hard to believe that the failure known as Joe Biden could sink lower into the sewer of history, but his handlers are sure giving it a try. We all know that the socialists and whack commies surrounding him are making the decisions. This was vividly documented by undeserved pardons and commutations recently. Adding further insults, Biden signed an order making more of the continental shelf along numerous states unavailable for drilling. In an odd deal, for some reason, Trump cannot easily undo this signature. I also note that Trump made some of this off limits during his first term. Some governors believe this may put their coastal areas at risk, despite the long and positive history of oil and gas exploration in the U.S. Then, of course, there was the Presidential Medals of Honor for George Soros, who has spent millions damaging America for some unknown reason, plus one half of a famous scumball couple, Hillary Clinton. And medals of freedom for greedy Nancy Pelosi and clueless disgraced Al Gore peddling his fake climate change story while getting rich. Biden has done so much damage to these awards, I believe the Trump administration will have to create new awards for the truly deserving in the future. Biden blocked Nippon Steel's $14.9 billion bid for U.S. Steel, claiming the deal could hurt national security. My regular listeners know that I'm very concerned about the 25 years of mega mergers in the U.S. However, there are exceptions. I mentioned recently when Spirit Airlines filed for bankruptcy when the JetBlue acquisition was blocked. That an exception could have been made in that case. I have mixed feelings about U.S. Steel. First, I hate to hear a U.S. company as iconic as U.S. Steel being owned by a foreign company. At the same time, Japan is a solid ally of the U.S. I have to wonder if some creative deal-making could have helped this deal go. The rationale for blocking the merger, including a national security review led by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS. The committee reviews investments for national security risks. Despite the issue being promoted as saving the company and its heavily unionized workforce, it was reportedly opposed by unions. Trump also opposed the merger from the campaign trail, but did not suggest alternatives. Despite failing at its only objective, the joke known as Judge Merchant sentences Trump 10 days before his inauguration. This is a case that took alleged misdemeanors that the feds refused to prosecute and that are now untimely and were spun into 34 felonies. This has been an extraordinary effort to stop Trump from becoming president. The only positive is that Trump can now appeal, and perhaps a federal judge will step in and stop this harassment. The order of an unconditional discharge sentence is usually when the crimes are insignificant, a misdemeanor, or less serious felonies, and where there are other extenuating circumstances. The suit has been done untold damage to the New York legal system, and I have encouraged the Texas Bar and other bar associations to no longer extend reciprocity to members of the New York Bar. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau announces his resignation. The world went crazy when Trump took on Canada, Mexico, Panama, and Greenland in just a couple weeks. In fairness, Trudeau was a goner before Trump took office with ratings among Canadians below the dismal rankings of Biden. I have strong ties to Canada, and even the liberal-leaning people I know were done with this failure. Still, it was interesting that he did visit Trump before resigning, and I do not expect Canada to give up its nation status. Your intrepid host is what some would call a teetotaler, or someone who does not drink alcohol. The U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy announced that alcoholic drinks should carry a label warning consumers about their cancer risk. Alcohol consumption increases the risk of developing breast, colon, liver, and other cancers. Murthy also recommended guidelines on alcohol consumption limits to be revised in terms of the number of drinks for adult men and women. This would be in addition to current warnings on birth defects and impairments when operating machinery. The report stated alcohol consumption is the third leading preventable cause of cancer in the United States after tobacco and obesity, increasing risk for at least 7 types of cancer.
Our series interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure you'll agree that he deserves the moniker of an interesting person. Saving America welcomes George Fernandez. He is a visionary leader and entrepreneur with over 20 years of executive experience in both private and publicly traded companies. He specializes in electronic payments, ATMs, cryptocurrency, and precious metals.
Thank you.
Throughout his career, George has driven the creation and implementation of strategic and has established several companies as market leaders. He's played a pivotal role in decision-making, actively participating in design, market strategy development, and launch of innovative products, including the world's first ATM to dispense gold-backed notes. He has a proven track record of not just launching and scaling successful ventures such as PowerCoin and Level 4 Americas, but also in cultivating a collaborative and innovative company culture. Under his leadership, PowerCoin rose to become one of the most profitable crypto ATM deployers globally. During his time at Level 4 Americas, he guided the company to its position as the largest retail ATM deployer in Mexico and a prominent player in ATM software testing in the US. He steered Paramount to become one of the largest ATM operators in the US, led Heller Capital through strategic acquisitions and boosting their market power. George has served on the board of the ATM Industry Association, established the Crypto Deployers Forum. He is a recipient of numerous industry awards, the Lifetime Achievement Award from ATMIA, and also listed in the Marquis Who's Who directory, holds an MBA in International Business from UMiami, Herbert School of Business, and a BS in Marketing and Computer Science from Seton Hall University. He is fluent in English and Spanish. He's presently Chief Strategy Officer of Magnus Consulting, operating from both Florida and Puerto Rico. We had to shorten his bio so he would have time for the interview itself. We welcome George Fernandez for his first appearance on Saving America.
Wonderful. Thank you, David, for that introduction. Are you sure that that's me that you're reading all the stuff about?
Well, I sure hope so. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble for false advertising here or something like that. So,
I appreciate the invitation of being here.
You bet. Well, we're delighted to have you. And you are speaking to us today from your base in Puerto Rico. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Your first time interview from the island, and we're delighted to have you. As you know, we ask 3 general questions of our guests. In our year's interviewing guests on Saving America, you're our first guest to speak about Puerto Rico. You have shared with me that the island is faced with challenges, but many are the result of problems of administration. Please explain more about that to our audiences.
Sure. So one qualifier before I gave my opinions, and that is I am not Puerto Rican. I wasn't born here. I wasn't raised here. I've been traveling to this island for the last 30 years on business. I've been married to a wonderful Puerto Rican lady for the last 12 years, and I've lived here for the last 5. So that's kind of my connection to the island. I have gotten pretty involved in the local, politics, not being a politician, but just being aware of what's going on in the island. And I find that, traveling the world sometimes is better to have an opinion about something when you're not emotionally connected to that subject, right? So as I've traveled here and as I lived here, and again having a Puerto Rican in my house, I hear a lot of the things that are historical, which have led to some of the problems. And again, having my background, and I'm originally Cuban, but I lived in Spain and the United States and lived abroad, done business all over the world. I'm able to look at the situation here with a completely different set of eyes from perhaps the locals who look at it mostly from a passionate perspective and point of view. So that as a background to make sure that people understand that I'm saying this not as a Puerto Rican, but as an unattached person in this situation. So on to your question. Yeah, I mean, this is an island that it's 100 miles across and 35 miles up and down. On its best day, it has about 3 million people that reside here. So you look at it and you say, it should not be a difficult place to manage and govern. Yet it is, right? And I am a amazing patriotic American, but I think a lot of the issues in this island are caused by the United States, because this is a place that historically, it's never been independent. It was first a Spanish colony for many, many years. And then, over the last 100 years or so, it's been an American colony, right? And even as an American colony, it's gone through a couple of different gyrations of that over the last, since the early 50s or so. It's a commonwealth of the United States, and Puerto Ricans are American citizens. But because it's not a state and it's not an independent country, it's kind of in this hybrid middle. And that creates a lot of the confusion of the local population here about who they are. Are they Puerto Ricans? Are they U.S. citizens? And the population is kind of divided, right? A lot of them, Puerto Ricans are very proud of the island. They're very proud of their heritage. And so you ask any Puerto Rican in the streets, they will tell you that they're first, they're Boricuas, and Boricua is even more than Puerto Rican. Is more like a deep sense of patriotism to the island. But at the same time, they have a passport that doesn't say they're Puerto Rican citizens, right? They have a passport that says they're American citizens, and they get most of the funding for anything in this island comes from the United States. But the problem is the United States just sends money over, right, without any accountability. And there is where I think the problem lies, right? This island receives billions and billions and billions of dollars every year in aid from the United States, whether it's for social programs or just direct cash, right? But very little accountability. And human beings are very easy to corrupt. So when you have that amount of money in the hands of people that are not being sort of held to any kind of responsibility what they do with the money, it only helps to create this corruption, right, that is going on here. And a lot of the issues in this island are because most of the administrations, and regardless of what party is in power, they use that money and in a corrupt way. Again, these are all my opinions, but if you look at the amount of money that gets sent to the island, and then you look at the infrastructure here, things don't make any sense. Like the roads here are in very poor shape. The electric system in this island is held together by barbed wire and duct tape, right? The Hurricane Maria in 2017 kind of showed the poor state of the system, and it hasn't been repaired. It was kind of patched up, and we get electricity, but 99% of the homes in the island have a generator, right? Because we don't trust the power grid, we don't trust the generation. So you look at this island. This is an island which has one governor and literally 100 senators and representatives, right? And each one of those has a staff of people. There's 78 municipalities, each one with a mayor and staff, right? In an island 100 by 35 with 3 million people, it's not possible to cover something like this, right? There was a study done that for every dollar that this island receives in aid, 46 cents of that goes to govern, right? It doesn't have to be that way. So I think, if you were to streamline the government in this place, you will probably have a much more efficient government. And if the United States were to put, accountability for every dollar that they send to the island, I think we would eliminate some of this corruption that we have here. So government here is not, people that run for governor, not just government, but any local, any public service office, it's kind of a job, right? Let's go be in power so that we can take advantage of these wonderful benefits that the United States mainland, as they call, the country here, sends us every year. And so I have personal experience where people have, said, hey, our party is in power right now. Let's go, eat at the buffet. Literally, that's how it was sold to me. And I
Wow.
qualifier. I'm not a politician. Will never pretend to be a politician. I don't like it. I steer clear of it. But it is a hobby of mine to see how the politicians work. And in my job, I've had to not just go appear before the U.S. Senate for some things that were being proposed that were going to damage our industry, but I've also appeared before the Mexican Senate for something similar. And I've spent a great deal of time between 2012 and 2014 walking the street, the hallways of the Senate here, because they were going to do something similar. So I'm very familiar with how politics works, but which is why I stay clear of it. But
well, it is pretty interesting, and I think where you've been going ties in nicely with our second question, which is, what is the viewpoint of Puerto Ricans about becoming the 51st state of the United States, which has been bopped around mostly as a political weapon because the Democrat Party believes that the island would be primarily a Democrat stronghold. I don't know if that's even true, but what are you seeing there on the ground?
Yeah, so because Puerto Rico is not a U.S. State, right? There's primarily two parties here, which have nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. The population here is divided amongst people that want statehood, right? They want Puerto Rico to be a state, and that is called the PNP party, the Partido Nuevo Progresista. And then there's the Popular Party. The Popular Party wants Puerto Rico to remain its current status quo. Okay, and then there has been a independent party that up until this year has been on the fringes, right? People that want Puerto Rico to be an independent nation, and that used to be polling around 1% of the population. Interesting this year, that party created an alliance with another party in the island, and all the polls say that they are going to be second, which is historical in the island, right? Beating the PPD, which is the Popular Party, which wants this place to be a status quo. So if they get that kind of support, it's going to be interesting how the politics in the island are going to change. Most of the polls show that Jennifer Gonzalez is going to be the new governor, and she belongs to the PNP party, which is the pro-statehood. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff is a lot of it is politics. To your point, right? In order for Puerto Rico to be a state, you have to have a supermajority of people voting for it. That has never happened. The best time that they've had in that is a 52% plebiscite that they did in 2012 around there, which it got 52%, but then the other party cried foul because of the way they worded the question. So the island is kind of divided between half that want it to be a state and the other half that don't want it to be a state. And the people that don't want it to be a state is mostly because of cultural reasons, right? People are, I said at the beginning, Puerto Ricans are very proud of their culture. They feel like they are Boricuas rather than American citizens. They use the passport when it's convenient, but that's when it's convenient, when they travel and to get the aid and all of that stuff. But on the day-to-day basis, Spanish is the local language that people use to communicate. And I venture to say that maybe 45% of the population is bilingual. Even though the education department here gets $5 billion a year in aid from the U.S. government, it's kind of ridiculous that the population is not 100% bilingual. You find Costa Ricans are more bilingual than Puerto Ricans, which is kind of interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
And so the PPD wants to be status quo, send me the money, I'm going to use it however I want to, I'm going to govern myself, and I'm going to keep my culture, I'm going to send my own Miss Universe contestant, I'm going to send my own team to the Olympics. And believe it or not, as bizarre as that sounds, that is a reason that they use in order to continue to be in this status quo. The PNP party says, no, we are discriminated against because we're, second class citizens. When I've challenged everybody to define what those things are for me, nobody can give me a reasonable, unemotional answer, right? So the people that want to be independent, the PNP party, I say, well, how are you discriminated? Please explain that to a non-Puerto Rican. And they give me all these things, which are all emotional, right? None of them are factual. And so, I think because of the interesting dichotomy of the island, again, there's a lot of confusion as to who are we, right? As an island, as a nation, and some people do identify with being Americans, and the PNP party is, I mean, they wave both flags with equal enthusiasm, and it's funny. I'm a gringo here, which is kind of ridiculous, right? But I'm a gringo here. I have a U.S. flag on my truck, and people go, oh, they refer to me in my neighborhood as the gringo, and I'm like, what's a gringo? So are you. I mean, I remember one time there was this soccer team. Anyway, it's a long story, but the U.S. was playing another country for the World Cup, and the U.S. lost, and this bunch of guys were sort of being glad that the Americans lost, but they were doing it in a very derogatory manner, and F gringo and this, that, and the other. And I went over there and I said, hey, what part of Colombia are you from? And he said, what are you talking about? I'm Boricua, and I'm like, why do you say that? I go, because you were talking crap about the gringos, but I bet you have a U.S. passport, right? And that threw him for a complete loop, right? And I was doing it to prove a point, right? Like, you call me gringo, but so are you. But it's part of the challenge of living here. I see when people from the mainland come to live here because they have these tax incentive programs, and they come to live here and they struggle for the first 6 months to a year because they come with the belief that, oh, this is just like moving to Kansas. No, it isn't. This is more like moving to Central America than it is to moving to Kansas, right? The infrastructure is different, the culture is different, everything is different. But there's this underlying feeling about the gringo that is coming to the island. There's a whole bunch of people that are very resentful that Americans are buying up a lot of the good Americans, right? That are buying up a lot of the good property in the island. And I'm not emotionally attached to any of this stuff. So even though I've been coming here for 30 years, I've been married to a Puerto Rican for 10 or 12 now, and living here for 5, my rational mind still cannot grasp this this feeling. And my wife has told me, it's like, the problem is, George, that you are a gypsy, right? You grew up in one, you were born in one place, you grew up in 2 or 3 other places, and you've been traveling the world for 30 years, and you don't have this sense of patriotism and all of that. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Maybe if I was born and raised here and had the history that the Puerto Ricans have, maybe I would feel that way. But since I don't, I look at all these things in a very practical manner, and a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. My father, taught me that in someone else's house, you don't have an opinion, right? So I say these things to you, and I used to say these things when I first moved here to people that were from here, and I was not a very popular person. So my wife was like, you need to tone that down. My wife is an attorney, and so she has a lot of customers, and she's known in the community, and she's like, look, stop being a gringo, and just, you're not going to change history. I agree with you now that I've met you and we've traveled the world together, but you're not going to change culture. So just accept it. And so I do.
And with that, we're running a little bit long, but sure. I wanted to get in our third question and give you a chance to talk a little bit about your business, because your business doesn't really have anything to do directly with Puerto Rico. But you are a pioneer in the ATM industry and crossing over with cryptocurrency, which is also something very avant-garde. Please share with the audience what you project will be the further developments in those industries.
Sure. So the whole concept of, so the first Bitcoin was created in 2009, and then by 2013, this ATM showed up that will allow a person to buy Bitcoin through an ATM, using cash. And so our company started way back then being the pioneer in driving these ATMs and allowing people to buy crypto through ATM. So today we're a software company, so we run this platform where different deployers connect their ATMs to my platform and allows them to sell crypto. So the platform does compliance, and it does all the liquidity, what we call the inventory of the crypto that you have for sale. So it does everything you need to have this business. The deployers do the last mile, which is like they buy the machine and they install at retailers and deal with the retailer. So that's what we do. That's what we've been doing. Lately, we've been pivoting a little bit and being more of a what I call a financial center, right? So we still sell crypto. That's what pays our rent. But we are also selling other products and services to that same machine, right? We're selling, all kinds of financial services, whether it be, bill pay, debit, credit card top-ups, doing currency conversions in some markets. We also started selling gold notes, right? Something called a gold back, which is an actual piece of it's the size of a currency of a $20 bill, but it's made of 100% gold, 99.9% gold, right? And so it's been sold online, but we started dispensing that through ATM. So we are integrating all of that into one device, and that's where we see our future. We're still going to be in crypto because that's a big part of our business, but we are also pivoting to offering these other products and services to our customers, and that's we're going to see that across many different stores in the United States. And by the way, we were the pioneers in Puerto Rico in installing those kinds of machines, and we still have a leadership position here. So.
Fantastic. Well, George Fernandez, it's been great having you as a guest. As you know, we became instant friends when we connected a few weeks ago. How can our audience get more information about you and your company and your endeavors?
Sure. So we have two main websites. The crypto is bitstop.co, bitstop all together .co, not without the M. And then the other one is the Gold ATM machine, and that website is goldatm.com, right? Same company, just two different products, goldatm.com.
As we grow up, a common reference for success or failure is the letter grade. Whether we're in grammar school or college, we all want an A grade and certainly regard an F as a big failure. Here at Saving America, we scan the news for reports of celebrities, politicians, or others who just end up in the public eye. So the A grades are awarded to people and organizations for great service to their communities, and the F grades, of course, are unfortunately more common, are awarded to those who need to do a lot better. Official F grade for the disgrace known as Joe Biden. Members of my regular audience know that I am the author of the book, Decline of America, 100 Years of Leadership Failures. In that book, I provide letter grades for the American presidents for what I call the American Empire. That started with Woodrow Wilson at the end of World War I around 1918. The book ended with Obama's presidency in 2016. That book was published in early 2018. Most agreed with the rankings of the presidents in terms of rank order, but still felt the grades that I assigned were a little too tough. I do not agree, of course. We only need to look at the massive national debt, the additional unfunded burden that is more than double the declared national debt, and the shortfalls in Social Security and Medicare to know that leaders from both parties have failed America. Hopefully in 2026, I'll release an updated book with chapters for Trump and Biden. But let's focus on a clown who is in office for 50 years, but has nothing good to show for it. In fact, the higher up the ladder he went, the more destruction he caused. On his first day occupying the White House, he reversed most of the initiatives created by Trump. This directly led to the explosion of illegals, estimated to be 8 to 10 million illegals in this country during his only 4 years in office. That includes convicts who are guilty of murder and a massive illegal drug problem. The country has also been damaged by a scourge of child abuse and trafficking of adults and children. He also killed the Keystone Pipeline, a true lifeline that will help America to be the leaders in energy for its own security as well as its allies. The latest is that the Democrats are trying to sell the materials for the border wall in an effort to frustrate Trump's plans to finish the wall. They apparently forgot the part about that they work for the taxpayers. That's taxpayer money, folks. In addition, we have instability around the globe with a special focus on Ukraine, the Middle East, and of course, dealing with the deranged Z in Red China. And who could forget the surrender of the Bagram airfield and the 13 dead Americans in one bomb blast during the botched Afghanistan withdrawal? We then come to the pardons. Nobody in America can be surprised that he pardoned his son Hunter. However, some misunderstood that this was to pardon himself, not Hunter. That removed Hunter turning state's evidence and ratting out Biden and his brother James. I still call for the Comer Commission to finish the investigation of this crew and, if appropriate, file charges. Inexplicably, another 1,538 grants of pardons and commutations were announced. This is interesting since they do not appear to have been carefully researched. One that attracted the most attention is former Pennsylvania Judge Michael Conahan. He was convicted in 2011 of funneling juveniles to for-profit detention centers in exchange for more than $2 million in kickbacks. He was sentenced to more than 17 years in prison after pleading guilty to racketeering and conspiracy charges. A number of those youngsters who were sent to these unearned facilities have had great difficulty following their incarceration. And in one particular case, a youngster did commit suicide. The families of the victims of this judge are going crazy over just that one pardon. How does freeing convicted criminals, including drug dealers and other bad actors, help the Democrat Party or Biden's already pathetic legacy? Inquiring minds want to know. Given how off the rails this appears to be, I have to question is if this is a play-for-pay scheme. Perhaps rewards to Biden with cash for an undeserved presidential library, or maybe just straight payola. I did want to raise an important legal question. Could we use the 25th Amendment to disqualify Biden mentally after the fact, in turn, revoke anything he did in his last month or 6 months, etc.? Let's see. I'm sure that my listeners are aware of his attempt to buy votes by writing off student debt. Not only did that backfire in his face, but the federal courts consistently ruled that he could not do so, and he kept on doing it. Then the unauthorized and, in my opinion, illegal application of rules to allow illegals to appear to be here legally has been a continuing problem. KTRH Houston claims that over 1 million illegals have been granted TPS, temporary protection status. This prevents deportation of foreign nationals who come from countries that are designated as ones experiencing famine, war, or natural disasters. Of course, this does not apply to most of the millions here illegally. There are 17 countries with TPS designations from Afghanistan to Venezuela. I might be okay with some of this if there was a legitimate screening process and proper limits placed on it, like having a sponsor with, say, 90 to 120 days. Then we had lawfare against Trump combined with ridiculous and unconstitutional treatment of the protesters on January 6, 2020. We've experienced the politicization of the FBI, DOJ, and other government agencies. This must be undone and then never be allowed to happen again. There's much more to say, but hey, time is limited. Dr. Dave awards the Saving America F grade to the disgrace known as Joe Biden. Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected appeals over COVID vaccines. SCOTUS rejected appeals brought over COVID-19 vaccines by the Children's Health Defense, CHD for short, Now, that's a nonprofit founded by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The nation's top court rejected an appeal seeking to overturn lower court rulings that said CHD and its members lacked standing to sue the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. This is related to the emergency authorizations of COVID-19 vaccines for minors. SCOTUS also rejected another CHD appeal in a case that challenged the COVID-19 vaccine mandate imposed on students at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Likely, SCOTUS relied on a 120-year-old ruling in Jacobson versus Massachusetts, which held a state law requiring vaccination against smallpox. Of course, the distinction is the smallpox vaccines have been extremely effective, and that's been proven over a very long period of time. The CHD attorneys have argued that there was a recent federal appeals court ruling that held that the Jacobson case did not apply to the case filed against the COVID vaccine mandate in California because there was insufficient evidence that the current COVID-19 vaccines prevent the spread of disease. Part of the legal problem here is that the U.S. government granted the vaccine makers and any related party near complete freedom from liability in the early going in the COVID pandemic. The idea was that the vaccines would get out faster if they did not have to get the full government backing and just get out there and do it. Unfortunately, these vaccines with the government backing overpromised and underdelivered. The most likely outcome at this point might be, should another pandemic arrive, the government will be more careful in granting liability waivers to pharmaceutical companies. At least we can all hope so. A lawsuit has been filed in the case of a teen who died after eating spicy chips as part of an online challenge. This is a very sad case, folks. We have a teenager in the 10th grade in Worcester, Massachusetts, who is alleged to have died after ingesting some spicy chips. A lawsuit has been filed by the family against Hershey, Walgreens, and several others. It is alleged that the Packy spicy tortilla chip in its one-chip challenge was the cause of his death. The challenge was heavily promoted on social media. The teen died of cardiopulmonary arrest in the setting of a recent ingestion of food substance with high capsaicin concentration, according to the autopsy report from the Chief Office of the Medical Examiner. Most know that capsaicin is the element that gives chili peppers their heat. The report is that an autopsy revealed that the teen had cardiomegaly, meaning an enlarged heart, and also a congenital defect described as myocardial bridging of the left anterior descending coronary artery. While this is called the one-chip challenge, he apparently ate a good handful of these type of chips. The challenge chip contains seasoning from a Carolina Reaper pepper and a Naga Viper pepper, according to Packwee's website. The challenge includes eating a singular spicy chip, which, by the way, folks, is sold in a coffin-shaped packaging and turns participants' tongues blue. The challenge made it to Wikipedia, where it was reported that contestants were rated from going 5 minutes to 1 hour on video after eating the chip without eating or drinking anything else. So someone could be rated powerless to invincible in the challenge. Dr. Schein is going to pass on this one, folks. A Carolina Reaper pepper is around 1.7 million units on the Scoville scale, which measures the spiciness of a pepper, according to the product website. The Naga Viper is around 1.4 million Scoville units. A jalapeno pepper averages a mere 3,500 to 8,000 on the Scoville scale. That's about my maximum. Walgreens was the store where the Packwee product was purchased. Packwee, a Texas-based subsidiary of the Hershey Company, has expressed its sadness about the young man's death, but also cited the chip's clear and prominent labeling, highlighting that the product was not for children or anyone sensitive to spicy food or with underlying health conditions. Subsequent to the filing of the lawsuit, the manufacturer has reportedly withdrawn the product from the market and suspended the contest we just mentioned. One of the bitter ironies of the current focus on DEI in America is that not all minorities or protected groups are treated the same. And we welcome Stephanie Samsil. She's a senior at Towson University with a dual major in political science and mass communications. She has a journalism concentration. This summer, she is interning at the Heritage Foundation's marketing department. As an intern Capitol Hill reporter with the Media Research Center in 2022, she wrote more than 40 published news stories and questioned numerous members of Congress, including Senators Ted Cruz and Chuck Schumer. She has numerous articles and other publications. I became familiar with her as a result of her op-ed in the Daily Signal. We welcome Stephanie Samsil for her first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dave.
We're happy to have you here. So our first question, please share with our audience a little about your background and some of your experiences in high school that even in high school started to form your opinion of DEI.
Absolutely. So I am a half Asian and half white college student from Maryland. I've attended public school all of my life, both K through 12 and at a public state university currently. I'm a senior. And so I know firsthand what it's like to be in these classrooms with very liberal professors, teachers, students, who all seem to come to this consensus that DEI is a wonderful, great thing that everyone should be on board with. And if you aren't on board with it, then you must be some raging white supremacist. Well, let me be an example that that is not true. Okay, I am against DEI, not because I'm against diversity or I'm against inclusion. It's more so the middle term that I have an issue with, equity. Because proponents of equity are the first ones to say that it is different from equality, right? It is not enough for us to all be created equal, to all have equal opportunities. What they argue for is equal outcomes, equal representation across the board, no matter your race, gender, sexuality. And so these proponents are ignoring individual talents and individual merit that is the foundation, I think, for the American dream, right? We all want to work hard. We want to earn the positions by our merit and not because we check a box that gives CEOs a pat on the back, you know, they hit their racial quota or their diversity check. It should be because they care about us as people. They recognize our hard work and our character and our merit. So as far as my experience in high school goes, I remember being a senior, applying to these colleges. I used the Common App like everyone else. And so I had approached one of my teachers about what she thought I should write about in my essay, what topic. And she just looked me up and down through a screen because this was during COVID. She looked me up and down, squinted at my face and said, "Have you considered writing about your race in your college essay? Because you're clearly not white." And that baffled me. I was offended because I had known her for a while. I had looked up to her. She knew me as a great writer, and a lot of teachers had talked about how I had a very high GPA. I worked really hard on every assignment I was given. So to be reduced in that moment to my skin color, my status as a non fully white person, at least, like she didn't care about my work ethic in that moment. And she signaled to me quite clearly that these administrators, these people at these colleges cared more about what boxes I checked and what my skin color was as a minority than my accomplishments, my character, that type of thing. So from that moment on, I decided I would speak out about this, and I would do so respectfully, but truthfully.
That sounds great. And as you know, we asked 3 questions. Our second question, I came aware of you because of your essay in the Daily Signal. And in that, you reflect on your college experiences. What is your general reaction to how DEI is used in college? So we talked about high school. Let's talk about college.
Sure. I think just like in high school, it does a grave disservice to hardworking students, staff, faculty who work really hard for their research and their credentials. And the reason why I think it does a disservice is because it takes the focus away from hard academics, reading, writing, arithmetic. It takes the focus away from that and places it on, okay, this is how you are oppressed because you are not a white person. And we want you to know that the American dream just won't come as easily to you because you're just not white or you're not male. And that's ridiculous. That's a lie. And we should be empowering students with the truth and with our true history, with hardcore academics that get at the facts, that aren't so emotionally driven and don't pander to identity politics. And so I've been in these classrooms with students who have just shamelessly said to me, just like my high school teacher in a way, you know, Asian Americans today would be nowhere without Black people. I don't say anything. The professor doesn't say anything. Some people might chuckle, but they don't ask him or her to elaborate. They don't ask for the facts, and it's just kind of become this norm. Like you don't speak out about that. If you do, you would be accused of being racist or homophobic or transphobic, whatever ist or ism you could attach to that. And it's sad that we've come to that point where we can't have substantial arguments anymore, and we can't argue with the truth. It's really just emotionally driven. And as far as like history goes, you know, people left and right in my classes will say, like, well, yeah, America is a systemically racist nation. Yeah, I agree with that. They can name which founding fathers owned slaves and so forth. But what they don't know, and what I didn't know until recently at Heritage, was that 80% of the slaves that were sold from Africa were shipped not to the US, but to Brazil. And it really, I'm not saying that to whitewash history or anything. I'm saying that because it gives you a fuller picture and a fuller context of what the world was like at that time. It wasn't just America. But from the narratives you hear in these classrooms, you would think, wow, America is just bad. We had a terrible founding. We should not be proud of it. We should not be proud to be Americans. And that's really sad. So I hope more people will, again, speak out, speak the truth, and try to counter these narratives that we should be ashamed to be Americans and that the American dream isn't real.
Well, I have some big predictions for your American dream. I very much think you're going to get there. Our question number 3 is, in your essay that I found, I may be biracial and have Asian heritage, but that identity has no bearing on my most important and fulfilling identities. Child of God, daughter of 2 great parents, proud sister, and friend to many. This is a wonderful, powerful statement. Share with our audience what experiences have prompted you to write that specific statement.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Well, as I was writing this essay, I was aware that people would try to write me off as just another Asian American and, you know, again, boil me down to the exterior qualities that a lot of people would see just on first glance. But at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all searching for meaning. And so for me, that meaning is found in Christ. And I wish I could say to you that I've always felt that way, but it was something I really had to come into in my own time. As a baby, I was baptized in a Catholic church, and it actually wasn't until middle school, when my friend had introduced me to her hometown church, that I started attending for a couple years and then decided to get baptized. And that was the best choice of my life, because my faith reminds me of what truly matters. And it's not your position, it's not the boxes you check or who you know, it's where you come from. And your worth, my worth, comes from Christ and what he did for me. I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. And so it's grounded me on truth and peace when the world is crazy. And there are a lot of headlines and a lot of reasons to be sad, but Christ is what gives me hope. And so I listed my family second because I truly believe I would not be here without them either. They offered me a support system. that I wish every child could get. Like every child deserves to have a mother who from a young age tells them like you can be anything you want. If you have the work ethic, you have great character, just go for it. Like everything you do, just give it your all. And so that's what I did. And I also had a great father whose hard work I could witness. My mom stayed at home, but my dad, worked hard to provide for us, and he still does. And I remember coming home from school in grade school, but also in college, where I would be doing homework at the dinner table, and I would just think, man, like, when am I going to use this? When am I going to use trigonometry or so forth? And like a lot of students, I just thought, oh, I'm too good for this or whatever. And he said to me, when I was your age, I also wasn't crazy about school. It wasn't until I got to college actually that I applied myself. And I realized because I was paying out of pocket that I was investing in myself. So education is an investment. And even after you graduate, the rest of your life, it should be a learning experience. And so I took that to heart from a young age, that life is lifelong learning, and that's what it's about. And that's why I care so much about education and why I want to speak out about this and against DEI.
Very inspiring. How can our audience get more information about you and the things you're interested in?
Sure. Well, to read my op-ed, you could Google Daily Signal and my name, Stephanie Samsel. But my social media is at Stephanie Samsel on Instagram and at Steph Samsel on Twitter.
Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you